Hello everyone and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. I am Captain Zelnick and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a special video here in a tutorial in making Space Marine fleets. Now, I know a lot of you are a bunch of fellow old fogies in the fandom, but I'm sure that there are a couple of people who actually do appreciate the more modern Space Marine lore, and I want you all to know that you can still make a more modern Space Marine fleet that better represents the modern Space Marine dogma compared to the old Space Marine fleets and old Space Marine dogma that came out before, roughly speaking, 8th edition. So I'm going to be going over 3 separate fleets. They're all very, very similar, but I'm going to be explaining how to make a Space Marine fleet, how to make it effective, and I'm going to do it in a couple of ways, namely how to do it with a venerable battle barge, how to do it with a fortress monastery, and how to do it with neither of those. So 3 separate ways to make a fleet, and I'm going to go over a couple of the differences in regards to these fleet lists and why you'd want to pick one over the other. So we're going to begin with the Codex Astartes fleet list. This is effectively the original Astartes fleet list. Now, if we were going by pre-2010 rules, this would be much easier. Unfortunately, 2010 came and went and caused a lot of changes to the Space Marine fleet, which means I'm going to have to go into a little bit of minutia, but before I go into that, just a reminder, please go back, watch the videos and read the books. I'm not going to go over a lot of the details when it comes to the actual rules of the Space Marines. I'm assuming you already know all that stuff. So, to begin, we have the Codex Astartes fleet list. This is effectively the very first Space Marine fleet list that was ever released. Not a lot of changes have been made to it, with the exception of the venerable battle barge. But let's get into the details. First things first, in our fleet command section, you have the option of a master of the fleet at leadership 10. He has 50 points. He's 50 points and he must be taken on a battle barge in preference to a strike cruiser if it's over 750 points, so no surprises there. Again, only may. You do not need to have one if you are not above 750 points. If you buy a fleet commander rerolls, you may do so at the following cost, and you will find that these rerolls are rather cheap. And he does not come with a reroll. You have to purchase them. Now, again, fortunately, they're pretty damn cheap. You may also take a Terminator boarding party on the Master of the Fleet ship and onto the ships. Now, you may have between 0 and 3 battle barges. That is a really big number of battle barges given the cost of the individual ship. You may include 1 Space Marine battle barge for every 1,000 points. Points or part thereof in your fleet. The fleet can include a single venerable battle barge as counted as one of the 3 allowed. So, no taking 3 standard battle barges and a venerable. Chosen from any available Imperial or Chaos battleship, Grand Cruiser, Battle Cruiser, or Heavy Cruiser at the listed cost, plus an additional 35 points for its Space Marine crew. Now, an important point on this. If you do take a venerable battle barge from one of these options, you may not take any upgrade that is listed in the ship's description. Okay? Your upgrade is going to be the Space Marine upgrade. So, if you're trying to take a repulsive, you're not going to be able to get its extra shield or its extra range on its dorsal lances. So bear this in mind when you are selecting. When it comes to venerable battle barges, most people take the sticks, but I've seen people take all sorts of things. The Apocalypse is actually a very common one because it has a Nova cannon and lances, and you can take it. You may also take a standard battle barge at 425 points. You may also take 0 to 10 strike cruisers. You don't have to take any if you so desire. And escorts. You may have any number of escorts in squadrons of 2 to 6. Your options are Nova, Caladius, Hunter, and the 3 forms of rapid strike vessel. And in your ordnance section, any ship with launch base carries Thunderhawk gunships. Ships with torpedo tubes are armed with ordinary torpedoes and boarding torpedoes. So building in this fleet is actually pretty darn simple. It really becomes a matter of where you want the most firepower to actually reside in your fleet. Now, the Space Marine fleet is a bit of a surprise fleet in the sense that it's actually meant to be more focused on its escorts than it is on any capital ship. That does not mean take only escorts. You will find yourself missing out on a lot of the special rules that the Space Marines have access to by simply going nothing but escorts. Strike cruisers are a phenomenally good little light cruiser, and with all of their new upgrades, with the enhancements of things like one can take a lance, one can take more bombardment cannons out of the prow, you can take Thunderhawk annihilators, all sorts of wacky, zany upgrades, there's a lot of reasons to take a good number of strike cruisers. Not to mention the fact that if you don't take them, you're not getting the benefit of boarding. So remember that the Space Marines are a surgical strike force. Their purpose is to pick a target and remove that target, either through boarding or shooting. So let us build a list out of this fleet list really quick at 1,500 points. So, so you can actually see the calculator. Here we go. All right. Now, this fleet list is very much designed far more to be focused on the smaller ships than the larger ships. This is also typically the fleet that people can take when they want to use Space Marines as a pirate faction in a campaign, simply because it's a nice and easy fleet. There's not a lot of fluff, there's not a lot of fillery, and there's not a lot of things to be concerned about when you're dealing with building your fleet. It's a nice, simple, quick fleet. Oh yeah, important point. It's very fast. This is a very fast fleet for a human race in general. So, obviously, 1,500 points, we have to start with what we have to take. We must take a Master of the Fleet. So we'll start with 50 points. There we go. Now, I am going to actually avoid taking a battle barge because I want a little bit more of a zippy, strong, and kicks like a mule fleet, as opposed to something that is filled up with a third of the fleet cost solely in one ship. So I'm going to start actually down here in. Actually, I'll start here with the strike cruisers because if I have a master of the fleet, I have to have a battle barge or a strike cruiser. I can't throw him on an escort squadron. So I'm going to start with at least one strike cruiser. Now, if I'm going to be smart about this, let's have a look at my strike cruisers and see what kind of upgrades I should be able to take on it. Because I should consider this right away. Well, first things first, as many strike cruisers in the fleet must be armed with their basic weapons as listed. So I'll take the basic profile. There's nothing wrong with this profile, and I'm definitely going to take that additional shield for 15 points. So that is going to be 160 points right off the bat. So 210 points. My Master of the Fleet has a place to sit. Ideally, doing nothing because the rest of my fleet is going to be doing all of the hard work. Now, I'm going to now start focusing on escorts. Well, I want Novas because Novas are among the best ships in the escort class. So that's 50 points, 300 points for a set of 6. And I'm going to also want some hunters. I love hunters. They are the better Cobra. They're super fast and they are super effective. So that is 240 points for 6 of those. So right now I'm sitting on 12 escorts. I'm doing pretty good for that, but let's add in some more strike cruisers. Let's not have my poor Master of the Fleet quite so left on his own. So I'll actually add another 160-point strike cruiser right there. That means it has 2 shields and the standard loadout. I also can launch Thunderhawks at a relatively effective rate. But what else should I do? Well, why not add in 3 Gladius? Nothing wrong at all with that. So let's see, that's 45. Oh, geez. Watch me be terrible at math. 40 plus 15. 200, 265? Ah, my math is terrible. So, 45, 135 plus 135. That's how you know I suck at math. Okay, so we are now sitting at 1180. Now, this is a really good zone for us to work in. We already have 18 escorts. We are escort heavy. We have a lot of good firepower in our fleet solely from the escorts. We have 2 strike cruisers, and we have about 320 points to play with. That's amazing. Guess what that means? 2 more strike cruisers, exactly 1,500 points. We have a bare bones master of the fleet, 4 strike cruisers, and 18 escorts. What a solid fleet that is. We don't need any kind of useless, upgrades. We are set really well. And if you want, let's go down here and see what kind of things we can shift it around. So you can replace the 2 of these strike cruisers with a torpedo tube, or you can replace 2 of them with bombardment cannons, or you don't have to change them at all. Plain and simple. You already have a really solid group, but you have that flexibility in order to place those wonderful strike cruisers with some really nasty firepower. If I were to choose, we already have really good torpedo loadouts thanks to the Hunters, so I would go with these bombardment cannons. Or I would keep it normal and have launch capacity 8 Thunderhawks, which is definitely not a bad option. All right, now let's go on to the next fleet list. So the next fleet list outside of for the Space Marines is the Crusade fleet list. Now, there are some pretty dramatic changes to the Crusade list. The leadership area is exactly the same, but right here is where things get weird. You may pick, if your fleet is worth at least 2,000 points, you may have a fortress monastery. Okay? You can actually take in a fleet a 1,000 point fortress monastery if you are delightfully insane and use it in a normal game. Why? Because now, if the Master of the Fleet is assigned to the Fortress Monastery, its rerolls are added to those of the Master of the Fleet, which means you can purchase all of these and then all of these. So you can get up to 6 rerolls if you so desire. This will not happen. This will not be necessary 99% of the time, but it is the Fortress Monastery. Down here in your ships, your ship area, you are looking at, of course, the same rules for the Venerable Battle Barge and the Battle Barge. You have 0 to 10 strike cruisers, but down here in the escorts area, you'll notice you do not have access to the other escorts. You don't have access to those commissioned escorts. You are stuck with these 3. Not that you really need the other ones, they're just cheaper versions of these and not as good in any way, shape, or form. Now, also over here, very importantly, a Space Marine Crusade list will not take ships from or provide ships to any other fleet list as reserved or allies, including Imperial Navy Rogue Trader and Adeptus Mechanicus fleet. So, and the scenarios rule here is mostly due to things like campaigns. So we have a pretty dramatically different fleet solely because of the Fortress Monastery. Now, if you go back and read the rules of the Fortress Monastery, 1,000 points is well worth the effort. It is a ridiculously overpowered piece of hardware. So, why don't we try and make a fleet with a Fortress Monastery? Why the heck not? Well, obviously, we're above 750 points. I mean, this is no surprise at all. So we're going to spend 50 points for a Master of the Fleet, and then 1,000 points for the Fortress Monastery. Now, the Fortress Monastery in this particular regard is taking up pretty much everything that we would ever want out of a Venerable Battle Barge or a Battle Barge. And what you really need in this particular case is a lot of fast-moving objects in order to support it, because it's not going to be moving. So we probably should be building the rest of this fleet out of our escorts, and that would not be a dumb idea. And probably our cheaper escorts, because we only have 450 points to play with. So let's start with grabbing 240 for 6 hunters. Right then and there, that's what we're going to be working with. That leaves us right there with about 210 points. So I would then, this is my pick, take 4 Nova. Oops, what am I doing? Take 200 and take 4 Nova class frigates. And that's my fleet. It is not a very big fleet for 1,500 points, but well, hold on, I'm so sorry. If your fleet is worth at least 2,000 points, I have to take this back. So, taking all of that back, we need 50 points and then 1,000 for 2,000 point list. We have 950 points. My point is still the same. I just take escorts. There's no point in taking any other aspect of this, because if we're investing in the Fortress Monastery, we need firepower that's on a mobile platform, because all of our slow-moving or stationary firepower and launch capacity is taken up. So, in this case, 240 points for Hunters, plus 300 points for Novas. We have 1,590. You could take another 6 Novas. And I would actually, in this case, because we have such great amounts of firepower, I want to go for numbers. So I'm going to go with 240 for 6 more Hunters. That leaves us at 170 points left. I'll take 3 more Novas. 1980. There we go. That is a nice, solid 2,000 point fleet involving the Fortress Monastery. Now, another thing to consider, any ship with launch base carries Thunderhawks and Thunderhawk Annihilators. Bear that in mind. Of course, you will always have ordinary and boarding torpedoes. All Space Marine capital ships are equipped with drop pods. You may include a strike cruiser with the Honor Guard for 10 points, so bear all of that in mind. Read the rules, figure it out. Now, the Dominion list. The Dominion fleet list is, again, a little bit different. The Dominion fleet list has a little bit more expanded rules when it comes to reserves, but it also has this area over here. Let me quickly go back here. You can see it with the calculator up. So it has the Space Marines Captain's Rule. Aside from the Space Marine vessels themselves, a certain important Imperial Navy vessels within the Dominion fleet may well have Space Marine commanders assigned to them. Any Imperial Navy battleship, grand cruiser, or battle cruiser may have a Space Marine captain assigned to it. Space Marine captains roll against the Space Marine leadership table instead of normal table. Except for this bonus, Imperial Navy ships led by Space Marine captains do not benefit from the Space Marine special rules concerning boarding, hit-and-run attacks, or ordnance. So basically, it is 25 points to get a better leadership option for an Imperial Navy ship working with this fleet. You may also take a Honor Guard if it is led by a Space Marine captain. Now, let's look at the actual rules. Now, in regards to capital ships, it is exactly the same. You have access to the Venerable Battle Barge, and Strike Cruisers. You have access to the Rapid Strike vessels, but you also have access to the Falchion. Over here, in the original list, you only have access to the Firestorm, the Sword, and the Cobra. So you have a few more toys down here in the Dominion list. You, of course, have the Nova, the Gladius, and the Hunter. Now, reserves are where things get a little bit different. A Space Marine Dominion fleet has close ties with nearby Imperial Navy forces. Contrary to the normal rules, a Dominion fleet can take Imperial Navy vessels as normal reserves and reinforcements, including Adeptus Mechanicus and non-Xenos rogue trader vessels. For purposes of choosing reserves, battle barges count as battleships, and strike cruisers count as cruisers, for the selection of any cruiser, battlecruiser, etc. type. When the reserves are taken in this manner, the fleet can have up to 12 cruisers. However, in the course of a campaign, a Dominion fleet cannot take reinforcements from the Space Marine table listed on the page of the Battlefleet Gothic rulebook. So, that is this ultimately is where the Space Marine Captain rules come in. These are to make your reserve ships dramatically better, but it only really applies in campaigns. So I am now going to make a fleet with a standard battle barge. Again, making the fleet out of the Dominion or the Crusade or the... Oh, another important thing, I'm so sorry. This fleet does not have Thunderhawk Annihilators. It only has Thunderhawk gunships. And over here in the original Codex Astartes, only has Thunderhawk gunship, no Annihilators. Thunderhawk Annihilators only exist in the Crusade fleet list, so bear that in mind. Now, back down here, I will be making a fleet, 1,500 points, using a battle barge. Okay? Now, this is going to be a little tricky. The battle barge is a very expensive ship. And if you go back and watch my video, you'll see that it's, not necessarily the best ship for every job. But there are circumstances where the battle barge is particularly good, namely planetary assault and exterminatus missions. So, let us begin. First things first, obviously, we have hold on. Yeah. We obviously have the standard rules for Master of the Fleet, so we need to take our Master of the Fleet. So for 50 points, and then for 25 for his Mystical Magical Battle Barge. That leaves us about 1,025 points to play with. Now, this particular fleet, since I'm taking a barge, I'm actually also going to take some strike cruisers and make it a little more cruiser heavy. Let me play around a bit. Now, I'm going to take that upgrade, obviously, for the shield. So that's 2. Let's take 3 and 4. Okay. So we're now sitting at 1,115 points. I'm going to now take some escorts. Now, I'm going to, in this case, take some Gladius escorts because they're a really good, effective, all-around escort. So 135 plus 135. Yes, I'm terrible at math. We're now sitting at 1385. We have 115 points remaining. We can play around with this a little bit. We do have the option of taking some rerolls, and in this particular scenario, it may not actually be a bad idea. I think I'm going to be filling some of these points with some of these additional beneficial advantages that I get for being Space Marine. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to choose between a Terminator boarding party or some rerolls. Terminator boarding parties are only really good in teleport attacks, so I don't really see that happening a lot. I have very rarely seen teleport attacks outside the Necron fleet. And while this is a very effective attack, I've never found these points to be useful. You may find them to be useful. I never have. So I'm instead going to throw 75 whole points to get 3 rerolls on my Master of the Fleet. So I have 40 points remaining. Let's go down to the actual strike cruiser and see what I can do with some upgrades. Now, I have a couple of choices here. Now, the only real choice that I've already taken is the 15-point upgrade right there. Now, I could, if I wanted, replace the bombardment cannon for a Strength 1 30-centimeter lance, firing front, left, right for 20 points. I'm not really enamored by this idea. So, why? It's not a good upgrade. It's just not worth taking the lances and giving up your Strength 3 bombardment cannon. And it costs 20 points. This is very much a fluffy upgrade. So, there's really nothing here for a good choice of upgrades on that particular ship. Now, over here on the battle barge, there is no upgrade whatsoever. So I'm kind of in a pinch. I'm 40 points behind. So what do? Well, what I'm going to do, let me find my command area, is I'm actually going to reduce this by 25 points. I'm at 1435, and then purchase a Terminator boarding party. Now, I'm at 15 points under. That's pretty normal for the Space Marine fleet when you're playing around with barges at such small point costs. The unfortunate thing is playing around with the barge plays around a lot with the math in ways that are really unpleasant and makes these really awkward holes. I could drop the shields on my strike cruisers, but I really need those shields. 2 shields on a strike cruiser is really what makes them truly effective, and I'm not hurting that much for points. But if we did, let's assume that I would do that. What can I do if I take away 50 points and then the other 50 points for those rerolls, and then I take away the points for the shields on my strike cruisers? That's 15 points each. There's 4 of them. That's 60 points less. So minus, oops. Oh, I did the math wrong. So minus 50. Ooh, I'm mixing this up. Minus 50. Okay, and then minus another 50. And then let's actually minus the 50 properly, and the other 50. There. Now we're at 1385 again. Now let's take away those 60 points for the extra shields. I'm at 1325. I now have 175 points to play with. I could add in 2 Nova frigates. I could, and then take the 1 reroll. That will put me up at exactly 1500 points. And there's nothing wrong with a pair of Novas. Oops, I probably did my math wrong there. Plus 100. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So there you have it, a 1,500 point list with a battle barge. This is a pretty. This may sound ridiculous. This is a pretty fragile fleet. Your strike cruisers have only one hit, and you're relying a great deal on the battle barge for survivability. But it can be done, and it is still going to be a pretty nasty fleet. You still have the squadron of Gladius frigates, and you have those two Novas. You could divide them up into two squads of 4 with a Nova in each one. That's going to be very effective against just about any target. So there you go, everybody. A couple of examples of making a Space Marine fleet in 3 different fleet opportunities and types. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all again in the next video.